we've seen a staggering 10,000 plus numbers of people registered to watch today, and they are coming around from around the world from 69 different countries. And that's from this morning. More are registering. If you are interested to share what you see and hear today, do use our social handle, Be The Revival, and tag us at India Inc. Corp. So now, the exchange between Japan and India is said to have begun in about the 6th century when Buddhism was first introduced to Japan. After World War II, we saw Prime Minister Nehru donating an Indian elephant to the Tokyo Zoo at a time when Japan was reeling from its losses. 10 years ago, Japan-India was described as Asia's fastest growing relationship. Today, we're going to update that for you, looking at the driving forces behind this relationship, behind Modi diplomacy, the role of China, and security and business ties. And there is no better person to moderate this panel for you, Rajesh Shah, the co-chairman and managing director of Mukand. Mukand, of course, trades steel and steel products all over the world, including to Japan. Rajesh is also a member of the India-Japan Business Leaders Forum. Rajesh, I'll hand over to you now, and I'll see you at the end. Hi, Rajesh. If you'd like to introduce your panel, I'll hand over to you now, and I'll see you at the end of this session. Looks like we are having some connectivity issues with Rajesh. Rajesh, can you hear me now?
Start.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Rajesh Shah. I'm here in Mumbai, and I'd like to welcome you to this panel on the urgency of deepening India-Japan ties of every kind. We have, I would like to say that thank you, Manoj, for inviting all of us. I have had the privilege of being at each and every one of your summits since you started, so congratulations. Today, I would like to introduce first our two very distinguished panelists, and then we have a discussion on this topic. So first, Ambassador Chinoy, who is there in Delhi, and he's the Director General right now of the Manohar Parrikar Institute of Defense Studies and Analysis. He's a Foreign Service officer, and having served many positions, many countries as our representative, he was for 3 years our ambassador in Japan. And he's also served on India's National Security Council. So he's going to talk about a wide range of topics. And Ambassador Chinoy, besides being totally fluent in Mandarin, is also fluent in Japanese. And he's one of the few ambassadors that Prime Minister Abe Shinzo invites for lunch, who are the Japanese-speaking ambassadors based in Tokyo. So welcome, Ambassador. I'd also like to welcome today Sachit Jain, who is there as a Vice Chairman and Managing Director of Vardhman Steel, which is part of a very large Vardhman group of textiles. Sachit is in fact a very active member of the CII and has also participated in India-Japan Business Leaders Forum in different places, and his company also have Japanese collaborators. So if you permit, I'll just give a little introduction about myself and make some introductory remarks. So my name is Rajesh Shah, Vice Chairman and Managing Director for Mukand Limited, which is a steelmaking company. And I have been very interested in Japan for the last 20 years or so, visiting several times. And our company has an investment with Sumitomo Corporation, which they've invested around $200 million after many years of discussions. But at the level, because I had the opportunity, I saw the way the relations developed, particularly since 2000. I was just giving an anecdote that in 2007, the then Chief Minister of Gujarat, Mr. Narendra Modi, he visited Tokyo, and he had an opportunity to call on the then Prime Minister, Mr. Abe Shinzo. Now we go fast forward 5 years later, and in 2012, again as Chief Minister, Mr. Modi visits Tokyo, and I was really privileged that I could be part of his team. And two or three of us, I do not know what got into his mind, but he said, let me call on Mr. Abe Shinzo, who was not a prime minister, but just a member of parliament. So we went to the parliamentary office of Mr. Shinzo, talked to him for about 45 minutes, invited him for the Vibrant Gujarat that Mr. Modi did. But this was a fantastic coincidence, because a few months later, Mr. Abe Shinzo becomes the prime minister and has been the longest serving prime minister of Japan and most powerful. And that has led to this very strong personal relationships between the two countries, as well as the two leaders, because the very first country for Mr. Modi to visit as prime minister outside of the subcontinent was Japan. So we have a relationship that's built very strongly on a personal relationship, which is going really well. We've had so many people work at it. We've had annual summits happening every year, either in Tokyo or in India, of the prime ministers, and with that, business forums. But what we now see is that we need to review some of these relationships and see how we've done in these last 5 years, and what we should be doing in the current context of global affairs for the next few years. So just as a information, the annual trade between Japan and India and the sort of nature of the materials or the goods hasn't changed much, but it's only around $17–18 billion a year, which is really small. And the investment, direct investment or FDI into India from Japan, it's around $33–34 billion or so. So this is probably amongst the largest. I think even this could be much more, because at each of the business fora and political forum that were there has been a huge emphasis on increasing the business relationship, but possibly it has not completely happened. But I would like to invite Ambassador Chinoy not only to talk about his experience while in Japan, a tireless ambassador if ever I saw one, but give his views on the way perhaps the security relationship improved, what has happened in the business relationship, and where we could go from here. So please, Ambassador.
Well, thank you, Chair. And it's a delight to be here at the India Global Week 2020, both with you and with Mr. Sachit Jain. You're very right in basically putting it the way you did, that this is a very robust partnership that has been facilitated in no small measure by the personal rapport that the two prime ministers enjoy, that is Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Abe. What we have in place over the last few years is a special strategic and global partnership. And it's special in many ways, and it is strategic in many ways. It's also global in many ways. It's also a completely transformed relationship as compared to the period before 2014, I should say, because in many ways, this is a relationship that has always had great potential. It's always been spoken of, but it is also a relationship which was perceived to be falling short of its true potential. And beginning 2014, we have seen a sea change in a surge in terms of our connectivity. We've had a big surge in terms of the kind of programs that we do together. More so, we also have a growing convergence in terms of our shared values in terms of openness, democracy, rule of law, freedom of navigation and overflight, the kind of language and discourse that we see associated more closely with the geostrategic and geoeconomic changes that are taking place in the broad theater of the Indo-Pacific. The robust partnership has been underscored, particularly by the annual summit meetings between the two prime ministers. Unfortunately, as you are aware, Prime Minister Abe couldn't visit India last year. And in all likelihood, 2020 will also go by without a visit because of the COVID pandemic. But the fact of the matter is that there is a great deal of dialogue, even in terms of webinars and online connections, etc. We have a 2+2 dialogue between the defense and foreign ministers. We are conjoined in terms of being integrated with the ASEAN countries. We are part of the Quad, and we have a partnership particularly that's proved transformational in terms of India's economic development. And there I would like to say that Japan's been integral part of every major infrastructure project in India, whether it's the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, whether it's the dedicated freight corridor, whether it is the Delhi Metro, whether it is the Mumbai-Ahmedabad high-speed rail project, or even the Bangalore-Chennai Industrial Corridor. Japan is part of our smart cities programs. Every flagship program has the imprimatur and stamp of Japan written all over it. That includes, for instance, Digital India, Startup India. We have what we call the India-Japan Startup Hub now that is in place in Bangalore. We have an IT corridor in Hiroshima. In the healthcare sector, if I'm going to go back to my 3 years there, between 2015 and 2018, we actually made Japan the first international partner in our Ayushman Bharat program. That is the healthcare sector, because they have tremendous experience in terms of trauma care, geriatric care, in terms of their manufacturing capabilities in the field of medical instrumentation. And so for all these reasons and more, we needed to do more together in healthcare. But healthcare is complemented by new areas like agriculture and food processing, disaster risk reduction, where we now are part of this grand global sort of program for which the Prime Minister's made some major announcements. That's the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. And we have a digital partnership that has actually worked quite well. There is a roadmap for investments, and as you rightly put it, Japan is at the top of the list in terms of an investor in India, but trade has fallen short. Despite having an economic partnership agreement going back to 2011, it has fallen short. And there is a fair bit of talk today about Japan decoupling from China and moving away. But more on that later. All I would like to say is that it's easier said than done. We need to work hard in order to bring in Japan in a major way as it seeks to decouple from some of its overweening overdependence on supply chains out of China. But that's going to be hard, briefly put, because there is a certain amount of global value chain integration in that part of the world, East Asia. And as the Japanese move away towards South Asia, they have to be brought in with special tax incentives, special carve-outs. We have to amend our labor laws. And that really brings us back to leaders like you from the business world. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. See, when we talk about all this relationship, if we look at two countries, there could be no two different countries. I mean, they are homogeneous in terms of the way they're educated or the way they behave and their one language. We're the complete opposite of that. They are an aging society. We're a very young society. They're extremely rich. We would still have a way to go to even becoming middle class where we want to be. Yet now a common dream seems to have come about and laid over there. But I believe that business and trade makes things strengthened. So Sachit, would you like to come in on this, and why do you think, for example, when the trade with China or the US now is around $90 billion a year, with Japan it is so low, and how do we think that we could be a more attractive destination for investment in India with Japanese companies, Japanese technology? Please, Sachit.
Yeah. Thanks, Rajesh. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today. if we look at from India's perspective, if we want to be a $5 trillion economy, as our Prime Minister has enunciated, and as part of Atmanirbhar, you want to be part of the global supply chain, we have to understand that if we decide to go on our own, it's going to take us decades. This is the time for Indian companies to form partnerships with global giants. And Japan becomes the ideal country to look at because Japan has technology, process technology, manufacturing technology, and manufacturing is required to give us the jobs at the hardcore level. And if you look at if Japanese investments come into India, it can cater to the Indian domestic market, Southeast Asia. Together we can work together, as well as in the future, Africa. If Africa becomes a market, India can become a good manufacturing operation for Japanese companies to work together with Indian companies to export it to Africa and later even Europe. And in addition, because of the current situation, as Rajesh, you mentioned, that global companies are looking to have a China plus strategy. I don't think people will be shifting out of China, but they will want to have an alternate supply chain other than China. So India is very well positioned. But I think what is required is Indian companies need to understand that if we need Japanese companies, there is a lot of change in attitude, change in culture that's required. We need to understand that. The Japanese companies, we have experience of over 40 years with Japanese companies and several strategic alliances and joint ventures, including the latest one with Aichi Steel Corporation of Japan in our steel company. That it took us 8 years of relationship building with them before they came in. So many Indian companies lose patience before that. So it takes time. It takes time to build up trust. Then we need to understand that Japanese companies like planning a lot. So planning is very important. They are long-term oriented. They like to solve problems from the grassroots. They're very systematic in their approach. Indians, on the other hand, we like to move faster. We are a little chaotic in our approach. Everyone likes to think, and everyone likes to be a leader. So I think we marry these two methods together. The quality orientation and the safety orientation that Japanese companies have is phenomenal. And if we have the patience to stick with them, I think Indian companies and India as a whole can benefit a lot.
No, thank you very much. I think this is, you summarized it really so well. And I would say that one more factor that is really important for the Japanese is to build up that relationship of trust. Because unless you have that trust and the fact that they have researched for years and years on not just the company, the country, the product, but also the actual people involved and whether they can build that long-term relationship. So we need to be not just as a business community, but also as government and state governments. Everybody's very, very keen, but somehow it's not yet happening the way we think we should happen, so we need to focus. But Ambassador Chinoy, let me come to you for a moment. You have been part of four, at the center, I would say, I mean, the two prime ministers at the two summits as ambassador of India to Japan, of four of these. And, there's this line from a Hamilton song which says the room where it happened. So you've been in the room where it happened. So can you tell us something, how this is progress and what really goes on in such meetings? I mean, to the extent you can share something.
Look, I think at the heart of the matter is a very deep appreciation in Japan that India has a very good long-term future. The Japanese are convinced about that, and they are also enthused by the fact that we are an open and democratic society. So for quite some time now, there has been this notion of a China plus strategy in Japan that predates the Sino-US trade war. It predates the what you call the disruption in global value chains that has been caused by the pandemic. But when you look at the hard facts, you note that between 2018 and 2019, in that 1 year, when 56 Japanese companies chose to move away from China, only 3 came to India. There were 8 that went to Thailand. There were 11 that went to Taiwan. There were 26 odd companies that went to Vietnam and some to other countries. The short point here is that Japan looks to India as an alternative manufacturing hub for its manufacturing, not only for the domestic market in India, but also to use India as a platform for reaching out to regional and global markets. Having said that, there comes the next issue, which is that whereas the JBIC surveys annually put India at the top of the preferred list of investment destinations, well above China and Vietnam, in terms of the satisfaction levels, we are way below. So it's seen as a very good potential destination. But then there is a litany of requirements that the Japanese have, and that list could keep changing. When you meet a few requirements, they may have a fresh list. That's the way the Japanese operate. But we have to be, as Sachit said, patient. We have to have trust. We must make sure that the bad memories, such as there are of, for instance, the NTT Docomo's equity participation in Tata Teleservices, or Daiichi Sankyo's acquisition of Ranbaxy, these are forgotten. And it's best to relegate that to, distant memory, because the Japanese also operate by word of mouth. And trust in the Japanese system is a very big deal. So we have to do what it takes, in my view, to ensure that the Japan-India Business Leaders Forum, for instance, which meets annually, it has all the key elements on our side, FICCI, CII on their side, Keidan Ren, that we look to what exactly we can do for them in terms of labor, in terms of taxation, in terms of infrastructure and logistics, in terms of the timelines by which we operate. If we do that successfully, I have no doubt that we can actually draw a great deal more investment to this part and beat the others who are vying for the same affection and the same investments. We can beat them at their game. We should be able to do that.
That's great. No, that's something that is reassuring. Well, we keep hearing this, and we've been planning on it. Now we have Sachit, and I'll just add a few comments of my own, that let's say where the DMIC is and we want to have investments come in. That was what was planned. I have also been in several of these business forum meetings over these last 10, 12 years, and also at the signing of this economic cooperation agreement in Tokyo, which we did earlier. But we have not yet, though every state chief minister is absolutely dying to make sure that Japanese investment in infrastructure or in business, or it comes into their state, it doesn't happen as well. Do you think, Sachit, we should be doing something different as businessmen?
Rajesh, I think, yes, businessmen have to do something, and even governments need to understand how they will do things. I'll give an example, and that will illustrate my point. 3 Japanese personnel were to be deputed to our company to work with us as part of our joint venture. Their HR team came first to visit the hospitals around our factory to see whether the hospitals are good enough or not, whether the blood banks were good enough to have blood of their blood groups and so on. The kind of care that the Japanese need to take for their people, which means that we have to invest not only in physical infrastructure, we have to invest in social infrastructure. They also want to see if their people are going to be living here away from their families. Will they be safe in their living environment? Will they have some entertainment over the weekend? Will they have something like golf or places to go out and so on? They don't miss their families. So we have to look at a complete social infrastructure in addition to the physical infrastructure. So that is from the government point of view. Also, as Ambassador Chinoy said, things like labor laws and other things, we need to make those changes. That's at the government end. At the company end, there are still lots of things that we can do that we should be doing. As I said earlier, the focus on quality that the Japanese have is of a totally different order. And very often, I have seen that the same product you export to some other countries and there's no complaint on that front, and a Japanese customer will complain on that there's a problem. And very often we have a defensive attitude that if that customer can take it, another customer can take it, why are you complaining about this? Because for them, their level of sophistication and understanding of quality is way superior. So if we have that trust, as we discussed earlier, and the openness to listen to what they are saying, and invest into the relationship building, because initially they appear slow, because they spend a lot of time in planning, they go to the root cause. Initially their progress when they work with you seems very slow, and we become impatient. We want results faster. But if we stay the course with them, I have seen once they pick up speed, then they pick up speed at a rate it becomes very difficult to keep up. So if you invest in the foundation, trust in them, believe in them, because they are world beaters I'm talking about manufacturing, process industry that I have experience of. They are the best. So if you accept that, and on our own we have not been able to reach there, we need to absorb those methods. And then, of course, we have to move to a different level, which is the best of Indian companies and the best of Japanese companies to create an Indo-Japanese culture. One more thing, I think, as Ambassador Chinoy mentioned, if we have one or two bad examples which go in the press and people know about that, we need to create at least 10, 12, 15, 20 real successes. I mean, today we have a Maruti, but beyond Maruti, we need to have 20 other such examples of really successful organizations. And one large labor trouble in Maruti, the kind of problem it creates, it could be any reason, but one problem creates doubt in the minds of many other people. So we have to make sure any such problem happens, problems will happen, but immediately attack those problems and together work on getting success.
Could I just come in there, Chair, with your permission?
Yeah, sure. And then I want to come back to you about something else. So please.
Okay, just a quick word here. I agree entirely with Sachit when he says that the Japanese are perfectionists, and they also tend to move as a group. They swivel from one direction to another. So once convinced, the ship of Japanese industry makes a slow but inevitable turn in another direction. And we've got to make sure that the navigation is in our direction at the end of it, the ship of Japanese industry. It'll be slow, but it'll get there. The other point is that since they are such perfectionists, and we admire that, their technology, their innovation, their skills, we have to do what it takes to integrate them with our skill development programs. And that is precisely what I tried to do when I was there, by bringing them in through what I called, and the Japanese called, and we all called it together, the Japan-India Institutes of Manufacturing. This is to say that you get bigger bang for the buck in India if you can convince each of these large Japanese companies to open a small training sort of program, skills development program for our own people. And also have what we call the Japan endowment courses in regional engineering colleges that assures them of a steady stream of well-qualified and skilled labor. And if they were to migrate to other parts of the Indian industry, they carry with them that supreme experience of being trained in the Japanese way of monozukuri and kaizen and all that we speak of in management jargon. So it's very important to do this. The other part is getting our young people to go to Japan on jobs and being part of that climate there for 3 to 5 years under what we call the technical intern training program. It's not really an internship, it's a job market. And now with a lot of hard work, when I was there, we managed to reach an agreement whereby we today can boast of 169 young people who have gone on that program, are working in Japan, and they can become the nuclei of further change in India when they come back. They will seed a new kind of thinking. And we've also sent nursing people from India. In that geriatric society, they need people. So why should nurses only come from Vietnam and the Philippines and Thailand? In India boasts of a very large number of young people, and we are ready to provide young people to the rest of the world, including in the nursing sector. So I think we need to learn from the Japanese on the skills side, both in India as well as in Japan. Sorry.
Great, thank you.
elaborated.
No, I think that's really good, because it's a question of how do we create a culture that is conducive to both sides, and that's what we have to work. And now let me change the subject away from business and come back to you again. And that's really, how would you see the kind of relationship at the foreign policy level, or at the space or the defense level, between India and Japan, or India and China, or India and the US, or India and the EU? Would you like to give a few comments on this and where we might be? Because this overall political relationship also is the umbrella for creating everything else. We have a few minutes.
Thank you. At the bottom of it is a tremendous amount of reservoir of goodwill that Japan has for India and India has for Japan. As you know, the very word Japan is a brand name in India. It conjures up images of quality and skill and perfection and all that. Likewise, India is a very good brand in Japan. So with that kind of a basis, with the shared values that we have, it is inevitable that we should be moving towards other high-tech sectors as well, not just trade and not just investments. And I think among the new areas, it's not just the digital partnership that we are looking at, but also, for instance, improved and deeper engagement in the defense sector. Now, defense sector is one area where India is one of the world's largest markets. We import a very large quantum of our defense equipment and platforms, and yet Japan is virtually non-existent in this space. Despite having revised their own defense export guidelines, they're still not a player here, partly because they are given to G2G kind of contracts. And if they can't do it G2G, they are loath to go out there in the rough and tumble of the arms market and bidding and tendering and all that. So they're not used to that L1 kind of concept. And yet we managed to increase our integration with Japan through an increased dialogue, multilateral exercises. We exercise together in the Malabar. Japan is now a permanent member since 2015. We are also working together on what you call unmanned ground vehicles technologies, robotic technologies, artificial intelligence. There are some joint projects in the defense field as well. We have also got an agreement in civil nuclear programs. As you know, we've signed an agreement. We have a joint lunar polar exploration mission in terms of space dialogue, and even in cyber, we are committed to working together. So there is this vast alternative space available where we can actually do a very, very good, mutually beneficial tandem with them.
Well, thank you very much. We only have a minute or so, so I will just first thank both of you for being such active participants. I think we've learned a lot and exchanged a lot of views. What becomes totally clear to me is that we have all the fundamentals of a fantastic relationship over the next 2, 5, 10, or 50 years. And we have to figure out how to make this commercially viable, while politically, I see our relationships getting only stronger, perhaps even stronger than most other countries who might be participating here as well. Though every single relationship is important to India, I think the Japan-India relationship is one which is quite special, because it's one that has been built upon recently, at a much, much more intense level by Prime Minister Modi. So once again, thank you, everybody, and thank you for listening in.
Thank you very much, the both of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, in particular. Many thanks to the Chair.